What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to Off the Wall. I'm going to be reviewing Picard Season 3, Episode 4, coming right now. So, coming off the back of last week's episode where Riker kicked Picard off the bridge, we want to see what's happening next. Have they made up? Is there still tension going on? We shall see. And for me, this was probably the strongest episode so far of Star Trek Picard Season 3. Firstly, it was nearly an hour long, shocked, like 56 minutes, including the credits. Awesome. I knew it was going to be a good episode. Gladly surprised that Picard and Riker's tension are quickly resolved within the first few minutes. Riker explains his reserved approach was not to lose life and to stay clear and protect the crew at any cost. Riker apologizes to Picard and explains before he was right what they should have done. And he explains that there is a darkness that he feels when he saw his son's grave, and he's getting kind of regurgitating feelings and flashbacks, and he feels like, the sense of loss and hopelessness is surrounding him again, and he feels vulnerable. And this was as opposed to Picard, who is wanted to be the aggressor in the situation because he discovered a son. And the situation in the Titan is not looking good. They're dead in the water. There's pulses from the nebula that's affecting the ship, so they can't escape. Very powerful and emotional scene by both, but in particular Riker, and great acting from him as well. I believe Jonathan Frakes also directed this episode. So after explaining the death of his son, Riker discusses with Picard that they have explored to the edges and been to the edges of space, and he's still seen no evidence of any afterlife or any beyond. And Riker's obviously going through some kind of spiritual and philosophical experience where it seems very honest. And I really wish that Star Trek go into this further, because there isn't really a character or storyline that I can remember that talks about this kind of thing. Any main character that has a kind of deep belief in religion or an afterlife, because there's people all over the world watch Star Trek, all kinds of races, colors, religions, etc., that have different faiths and traditions and cultures. So, and they don't seem to have that in Starfleet in any way. And it would be totally understandable if a character, lost a son and had that kind of inner belief system. That'd be acceptable, because we see aliens have it. Aliens have gods, afterlife, worship, prophets, things that they, spirituality that they believe in, etc., but none for any humans. And it doesn't have to be preachy or dictating any religion or anything like that. It's just an interesting debate that Star Trek really should go into, because they're the only ones that can do it right now. It is, in terms of human philosophy, a deep question, which I would love if the show went into. Riker also explains that Deanna couldn't live with his feeling of loss and misery, and it was the mission that Picard explains to him. It was it was an escapism and a part of the grieving process for him to take him out of that situation and kind of take his mind off the loss of his son and dealing with it, and to go on the run for the emptiness and the feelings that you're going to have to deal with. And he runs to Picard to run away from the emptiness that he has inside and the feelings that he has to face up to. Riker then discusses with Picard to get to know his son and get your affairs in order, because potentially you might only have a few hours left. 7 of 9 then goes to the quarters of the Changeling and discovers a dead crewman. She explains this to Riker. Riker explains to keep this on the low, because he doesn't want to affect morale. It's already on the floor as it is. He doesn't want to affect it further. And to use this to your advantage, to go on some kind of stealth mode to investigate and see who is the changeling on board the ship. 7 of 9 decides to go to Shaw, because he's the captain technically of the Titan, and he knows the crew best. Try and get some advice as to who is it and how they can capture it. And Shaw's brilliant. He's really funny, witty. And then when 7 of 9 wants to speak to Shaw, she says, "Can I officially say something?" He says, "No." "Can I unofficially say something?" He also says no. And he's the captain of the ship, so it's just really funny. We then cut to Picard and Jack in the holodeck, where we get the information that the holodeck is an independent power source. I was always wondering that as well, just randomly, how it always sustained power, especially in this situation where they're taken off the life support, or considering it at this point in the episode, and they still have power in the holodeck. And Picard explains that it's used for these exact scenarios, for times of distress, and Jack and Picard have a heart-to-heart. So Shaw and 7 of 9 discuss how to find the changeling and why he took an appearance of a transport technician. I'm sure that will come into play later on. Obviously, we don't know at this point, didn't get discussed specifically, and Shaw advises to find or look in a kind of resting pot that a changeling has and to scientifically analyze the residue. And we cut to the Shrike where we see Captain Vadik cut her hand off because we know at this point she's a changeling, and the hand goes into some goo and it morphs into some kind of face or head figure that actually speaks to her. Really weird. Didn't see any of this coming. And she explains to this head hand creature thing that it's too dangerous to go after the Titan because the portal weapon is getting damaged in this nebula. The instructions that she gets that she has to pursue. I thought this was a good thing as well because the portal weapon seems too strong for the vulnerable Titan at this point. So it was a good way to eliminate that power source and in order to become a little bit of a fairer playing field. And the episode is continuously cutting to Picard 5 years ago, where we see him talking to a crew of ensigns and telling stories. Back on the holodeck, Jack explains to Picard that he's always been a loner, always grown up alone, doesn't need anybody, doesn't need this one-to-one father-son time. Picard explains, no, I need it. Seven tracks down the changeling, flies at it a few times. It melts all gooey and horrible, and it flies away back into the ship. Picard then goes on to tell Jack a story about the original Jack Crusher, which is Beverly's first husband. And during this conversation, an F-bomb is dropped. It did absolutely take me out and throw me off. Personally, I've never heard a swear word in Star Trek before. It's always been, famed for a family-friendly kind of show. It was definitely off-putting. It was, yeah, it's just very strange to hear, and it didn't really sit well with me. But yeah, it's just a slight negative on this episode. And Shaw arrives at the bar in the holodeck, and Shaw interrupts this heartfelt moment between Picard and Jack, and he tells a story about being infiltrated by the board as a kind of young engineer. And he explains, obviously, Picard was on the Borg ship at the time of this kind of invasion of their starship. And Shaw then tells Jack Picard was actually on that Borg ship at the time, and he was given a name by the Borg. He was that much of a killer. Jack tries to defend his father and tells Shaw to calm down. Picard says it's fine and kind of walks off. And he explains that he's just a dipshit from Chicago. We cut to Beverly, who's explaining that they need to leave and escape. Waves that is coming from the nebula will eventually destroy the ship. Jack explains and comes up with an idea that what if they absorb the energy to help give the Titan a push away? And they're in some kind of conference room, very Next Generation-esque, where they basically establish that they need Shaw's engineering skills to help them absorb this energy back onto the Titan so they can leave. Where they basically establish that they need Shaw's skills to absorb the energy to get back to the warp core so they can escape. Picard and Seven go to see Shaw in his quarters. And this is so well written, very mature approach by both of them, really. Picard takes the high ground and explains to him that he needs their help and wants to settle their differences. Tells him he needs his help, and Eve, despite you being just a dipshit from Chicago. Shaw clearly likes when people stand up to him, he appreciated it, and that's it, the beast squashed. So Seven then helps Shaw in the control room, and they're interrupted by the changeling who's taken a form of the young LaForge. Seven realizes and shoots them when they refer them as Commander Hansen. So we're now on board the bridge, but we also have a great action scene where the Titan actually escapes the nebula, absorbs the kind of waves, and they get power from it. Everyone on the bridge has room to shine, whether it's the Ensign LaForge, whether it's Riker, Picard, the Crushers, Shaw, they've all contributed very Next Generation-esque and typical Star Trek. Feel good factor, Picard was absolutely fantastic as well with the whole engage thing, and the music was absolutely brilliant, put a smile on my face. And who else watched this and must have went engage as Picard did? They built up to it, you knew it was coming, but we all love it. So as they're escaping, they're navigating the minefield, and they manage to, Riker's suggestion to have a tractor beam attached to an asteroid and fling it back on the Shrike, similar to what was done to them. And the Shrike is deeply and heavily damaged, but not destroyed. And we get a couple of shots of, I believe there's some new aliens discovered. And yeah, they kind of just get into warp speed and get out of there. As this is happening, we're getting flashbacks between the scenes 5 years ago with Picard in the bar and current present day on the bridge. And we established something that I didn't see coming. Jack was actually in the bar with the other cadets. Jack then asked Picard, did he ever have a family? Picard replies that Starfleet was the only family he ever needed. And young Jack is absolutely devastated, poor guy. It's a great scene. They're both thinking the same thing without saying the same thing or without saying anything. And you knew exactly what was going on. Picard was realizing. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. As Picard thought he was totally rejected by Jack, his mother, obviously Beverly, told Picard that he never went out to seek you, but now we know he did. He did go out to see Picard, and he tried, and he was hurt in the process. And you could see this happening just by looking at each other without any dialogue. Riker then speaks to Deanna in a really heartfelt message, and they come to a resolution. And this is completely juxtaposed to the start of the episode where Riker was at the beginning staring at death. They then staring at life of this new alien species, and it's given him hope and positivity now in his outlook. And it ends the episode with Picard giving his, I believe anyway, I'm not 100% sure, someone put me straight in the comments if I'm wrong, but I believe it's Picard's first captain's log since Star Trek Nemesis, and it was great to hear about because I was wondering, when is this going to happen? I don't know if it happened in season 1 or 2. It might have, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it was definitely cool to hear that again. Oh, and of course, Jack has some kind of hallucination where we see a spider, a dark looking web creature appearing in his hallucinations, asking him to seek him out. So overall, really fun episode. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, a couple of negatives is just that some of the interior shots are still really too dark for me, but I'm just getting accustomed to it now. And the F-bomb and dipshit as well, I'm not 100% cool with that stuff. It just takes me out a little bit. I don't absolutely hate it. If it was in just in ordinary sci-fi kind of shows or film or something, I'd be cool with it. But just in Star Trek and Picard doing it, he was always honorable and never did anything or said anything like that. So it just was a little off-putting in a way. But overall, really strong episode. I've just got a feeling the next, few episodes will be even more dramatic. We still haven't seen the Forge yet, and Deanna needs to come back, and Worf, and any surprises as well, because there definitely will be. I want to see who else will come back. Maybe the Borg, maybe is it Q? Super interesting, or maybe some other series or shows. Who knows? But let us know what you guys think in the comments. I'm really enjoying it. Please like the video, subscribe if you haven't, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.